A brief look at this subject's digital footprint reveals a constant state of chaos. The feed is an endless stream of public drama, alleged medical emergencies, tearful live streams, and recurring interventions from local authorities. When confronted by viewers pointing out the contradictions in these daily crises, the subject relies on a specific defense. She claims to suffer from a severe intellectual disability, specifically citing an IQ of 61. An IQ of 61 indicates mild intellectual disability, which severely limits a person's ability to manage complex logistical tasks. Yet this subject successfully planned and executed a cross-state relocation, originating from Illinois. She systematically navigated the move to Florida. The stated goals for this relocation were to secure new state-funded services and to distance herself from mounting legal scrutiny in her previous jurisdiction. Psychologists categorize this pattern of behavior as digital malingering. Malingering is the intentional exaggeration or outright fabrication of physical or psychological symptoms, done specifically to achieve a secondary gain, like financial donations or avoiding legal prosecution. The primary tactic used here is weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence occurs when a person purposefully performs a task poorly or falsely claims they lack the cognitive ability to understand their own actions, ensuring that others lower their expectations and stop holding them accountable. The documented behavior does not align with a cognitive deficit. Instead, the subject's actions are a highly structured manifestation of cluster B personality traits, specifically seeking narcissistic supply through calculated manipulation. Distinguishing between a genuine intellectual disability and a high-conflict personality disorder is the necessary first step to identifying online fraud. Treating malicious manipulation as a disability allows the exploitation to continue unchecked. A genuine cognitive deficit is a structural reality. An individual with an IQ of 61 displays consistent limitations in problem-solving and communication across all environments, whether speaking to a doctor, judge, or camera. What we observe in this case is the competence paradox. There is a stark, measurable discrepancy between the inability she claims to have and the complex capabilities she actually demonstrates. The verification matrix illustrates this. In the social media zone of fiction, broadcasting extreme trauma yields direct payouts of financial supply and sympathy. But in the zone of reality, she checks no on official legal and medical forms, actively avoiding perjury and fraud. This behavior requires a cognitive process called risk-reward code switching. She is constantly evaluating her environment to determine when it is profitable to lie and when it is legally hazardous to lie. Calculating these variables requires high-level executive function. These mental skills include working memory, flexible thinking and reasoning, active impulse inhibition, and long-term planning. The presence of this active, protective foresight directly invalidates the defense of having a 61 IQ. An individual with mild intellectual disability does not possess the executive function required to compartmentalize perjury from public performance. The clinical explanation for this behavior is the high IQ, low EQ paradox. The subject possesses the cognitive intelligence necessary to scheme and manipulate, but suffers from arrested emotional development. When confronted with her own lives, the subject erupts into screaming tantrums. These outbursts are not the result of an intellectual inability to understand the question. They are instances of emotional dysregulation designed to shut down the conversation. Her ability to selectively deploy and retract lies based entirely on her exposure to legal liability proves she is a competent, calculating actor who is fully aware of her own manipulation. This competence is not a passive trait. It is weaponized daily through a highly predictable, four-step behavioral loop. The cycle of manipulation begins with the hook. She fabricates urgent crises to demand donations, while simultaneously broadcasting luxury expenditures. This leads to the slip, where her narrative inevitably cracks. Once exposed, she enters the pivot, engaging in dysregulated screaming to deflect scrutiny. This reaction relies on a psychological tactic known as DARVO. DARVO stands for deny the behavior, attack the individual doing the confronting, and reverse the roles of victim and offender. By utilizing DARVO, she accuses her audience of being abusive, making them the topic of conversation. The cycle concludes with Phase 4, the reset. She dismisses the exposed lie as being for entertainment purposes, clearing the board to invent the next crisis. She demands strict privacy and protection from the authorities, while simultaneously and compulsively broadcasting highly sensitive, verifiable data about her life to maintain audience engagement. This four-phase cycle is a structured mechanism to extract financial supply while repeatedly resetting her victim status. To keep this manipulation cycle running, the subject requires specific collateral. This is evident in her intentional selection of vulnerable dependents. This sociogram illustrates her immediate network. Profiles exhibiting fictitious disorder require targets who completely lack the agency, the vocabulary, or the legal standing to contradict the fabricated narratives built around them. This exploitation extends to her pets. Viewers and local agencies have documented repeated incidents where her animals are subjected to alleged neglect, serving as props to generate outrage and online attention. Despite interventions from animal control regarding her bearded dragon, the subject refuses to upgrade its inadequate enclosure, prioritizing her defiance over the animal's health. Her choice of a partner follows the same logic. His documented, genuine intellectual disabilities make him an ideal, unquestioning prop who accepts her version of reality without challenging the inconsistencies. She actively mirrors his genuine cognitive limitations, adopting his mannerisms and struggles to bolster the credibility of her own digital malingering. She places her child directly in the center of the public drama, leveraging his presence on camera to generate maximum narcissistic supply and shield herself from criticism. These dependents serve a specific function known as the fall guy strategy. They are physically and socially pre-positioned to absorb the blame whenever child protective services or legal authorities intervene. She preemptively destroys her partner's credibility online, repeatedly framing him to her audience as slow or creepy. If she eventually needs to turn on him, she has ensured he lacks the public standing to defend himself. Her choice of companions is a meticulous calculation. They are selected specifically because they cannot speak out or advocate for themselves when her zone of fiction inevitably collapses. Pulling back to review the complete psychological profile shows a clear pattern of intent. The subject's digital footprint is the result of cluster B personality traits and calculated fraud. It does not align with the cognitive patterns of an intellectual deficit. This typographic breakdown identifies the core of her gaslighting operation. The entire scam relies on the audience mistakenly conflating her low EQ, her emotional immaturity and tantrums, with a low IQ, or a genuine cognitive inability to understand her actions. Allowing weaponized incompetence to go unchecked drains limited state resources, diverts funds from genuine victims, and enables a continuous cycle of abuse against vulnerable dependents. Recognizing the competence paradox and mapping this four-step loop identifies the strategic logic behind the malingering. True accountability can only be achieved by treating the subject exactly as her legal documents dictate, as a highly competent actor who fully understands the consequences of her actions. Identifying the mechanics beneath the sensational drama exposes a calculated playbook of exploitation. Understanding this playbook is the ultimate defense against digital fraud.
How dare you accuse me of anything? This is your fault! You are attacking me right now! I've done nothing wrong! You're the abuser!